do business with people they like. And so building those relationships and building a community feel where people feel, hey, I need some help.
Nothing beats getting in a room together and just throwing stuff up on a whiteboard and seeing what sticks and what slowly slides off as you investigate it further.
It's one thing to be able to say, hey, we know what the issues are. It's something entirely different to be able to say, and here's what the really smart CEOs are doing about it.
Welcome, the mind behind this week's podcast. I'm really pleased that we've got James Nutt from LinkedIn. He's a regional account director and he works mainly on the kind of the global staffing side right across APAC. He's got a really extensive knowledge of HR, tech and recruiting. He's working with a lot of recruiting companies and providers to really begin to navigate the complexities that are dropping in, not just within industries, but also with technology playing such a bigger role. He's got a really deep understanding of that talent acquisition and retention, and we shouldn't forget about that, and the critical role that technology is playing, where it's going as well. We are the People Strategy Group here. We're looking consistently at where Workplace 2030 is going to be. And James, with his experience in the UK, New Zealand, and Australia, with Glassdoor, with LinkedIn, with Hayes and Kelly Services, brings a really nice broad kind of experience to it. A few of the reports that we reference through here is kind of LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report and the ABCs of talent branding. But they've done some super research and just where do we see technology going? How's it going to change the skill levels of people and where people need to be? So we've got a really interesting conversation here that I'm going to guess will be one of many. Enjoy. James, it's great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a while.
It is. This has been a long time in coming, hasn't it?
We've
been trying to organise this for ages. I almost feel like the timing's right, just kind of with everything's happening, and the timing probably would have been right 2 months ago, and the timing will be right in another 2 months because everything's changing so much. So we're going to do kind of a bit of a dive into where skills are going, where learning's going, how HR is kind of dealing with all these shifts at the moment. But just kind of let's find out a little bit about James.
Okay.
We'll keep it good. We'll keep it good. I'm curious, getting into kind of the learning space, leadership skills, was that planned or a happy accident?
I think a combination, Graham, to be honest. Like I'd like to think there's some planning behind it. My career journey to date, where I've gone, where I've been. We might go into it a bit more, but yeah, LinkedIn was kind of a goal of mine, like to work at LinkedIn
Okay.
for quite some time. And there was a bit of a journey to get there. So I think there was some planning in that, for sure. But I think, yeah, we peel it all the way back to a fresh-faced graduate landing in New Zealand with hair. It was certainly a happy accident to fall into recruitment.
Yeah.
I think the kind of career pathway that's taken me to where I am today, there's been some planning in there. There's been some personal choices in terms of moving locations and things like that. But there's always been a bit of a plan behind it to get there. And I think, yeah, rounding out my experience to the role I'm in today, there's definitely planning, but you also have to have results in there as well. So yeah, I think a combination, and then saying yes to things, I think is the other thing, and backing myself. So
really interesting. I recorded a podcast as a guest yesterday. They said to me, "How have you managed to do what you do?" And I said, "I've said yes to things."
Yeah,
That's kind of just like let's see what happens.
exactly.
We've got very much that attitude. Why LinkedIn for you? Why was that a goal?
Yeah, so this is obviously the personal side of it, but
Yeah.
Using the platform every day in previous roles. Again, I remember when LinkedIn sort of came on the scene, pretty much coinciding with when I was studying, and a friend saying, "Hey, get on this platform." And then in every role pre-LinkedIn, I used the platform day in, day out. And you don't know until you get inside somewhere what it's going to be like, but the desire to work on a platform that I use daily, was a platform that opened career opportunities for me.
Yeah.
And we might touch on that in terms of where I've moved from and to. And yeah, just asking the question, in terms of when I saw a role, finding out, okay, who do I speak to, versus just applying, how do I use my network to open doors, and create opportunities for myself, which is also something that, we're sort of driven by here in terms of creating that economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And yeah, I mean, I still use it. Like, I still get friends contacting me saying, "Hey, I forgot my password. How do I get back in?" And I'm like, "Listen, that's not the area I work on, but let me see how I can help you." It's just a platform. I'm not on too much other social media. I've got a couple of daughters, and my wife posts a little bit. But it's mainly down to her, like social media wise, the amount of information we receive day to day. LinkedIn is really the only one I use. Um, and also to keep in touch. I don't know about you, like being an expat in Australia, it's also a platform I use if people are moving or people are coming to Australia. It's pretty much where they hit me up on. And so, yeah, it was a long journey to get in. And again, we might go down that sort of channel, but it was just always a goal of mine. And thankfully, yeah, it's coming up nearly 6 years now. I'm still
Nice.
different roles, different managers, things like that. But yes, it's still ticking all the boxes.
It's really interesting because you brought up, you said, I say yes, and also brought up about kind of using and expanding our professional networks. I'm still amazed with how little kind of leverage many people use with their network. I remember when I first moved to Australia, I kind of went onto LinkedIn. I went, who's here that I know? Who are my first contacts that I know? And there were a few people that I hadn't seen in 10, 12 years. And we connected and we just hit it off. There was just kind of that extra little layer to it. We'd been good connections previously, but didn't really know each other personally, and that's changed. And even just finding out about people, I have to say, this early doors. You and I went out for a coffee the other week, and we realized that we lived in the same street in Manchester.
Yeah.
We missed each other by about a year or something like that. And it's amazing just how many people cross over. And we just don't go to that depth. And it's not an advert for LinkedIn, but I do think that LinkedIn just opens us up to see those similarities. Um, so combining having a goal of LinkedIn and saying yes, is that one of the reasons that you've moved around a little bit? Did you have to do that to kind of to achieve this, or did it all fall into place?
Yeah, I mean, and that could be the happy accident piece.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we go, yeah, back in terms of the moving around, yeah, graduated. Well, in fact, even before graduating university, lived in Manchester, and we were, yes, on the same street, but
Yeah.
timeline apart, and um, probably frequented the similar coffee shops in
Quite possibly.
Manchester. Um, but as part of that, I did a year in Hong Kong, and it kind of, yeah, got the juices flowing, if you like, in terms of, okay, how much more there is to see and do in the world. My degree was international business, and so then when I graduated, a friend of mine had come out to New Zealand a year previous, so I said yes to that, and said, okay, well, let's see where that journey goes, in terms of moving country. And if it didn't work out, I knew there'd be a soft landing back in the UK. And then as part of that experience, stayed there for nearly 9 years. Um, the decision was made to move back to the UK with, at the time, my fiance, now wife, who's a Kiwi. And again, said yes. So we decided to move back, sold up everything, went with just a couple of suitcases. And people that are listening can probably do the maths in terms of how old I was at that point. But yeah, let's back ourselves. Let's say yes, land. Again, a soft landing in the UK. But I'd actually use LinkedIn as part of that move to say, okay, which are companies I would want to work for? Who do I know there? Who can I approach? And Glassdoor was one of the businesses. Again, saying yes to things. I could have, I'd worked in recruitment in New Zealand and well-being, and I had a couple of job offers in the recruitment world, but held off, and then the Glassdoor opportunity came through. Again, saying yes. So there was a plan there. And then, because there was a conversation with LinkedIn pre-moving to the UK, so I'm just going to fill that gap in. And I didn't have the tech experience. And so what Glassdoor gave me in my kind of longer
Right.
was that tech space. Again, saying yes. We actually could have moved back to New Zealand a year into being in the UK. Things weren't quite what we wanted. But then I was offered a new role at Glassdoor, and again saying yes. So we stayed on, and then had the opportunity to move back to the wellbeing company in Sydney, which was always again on my list, like my personal list. I'd love to work and live in Sydney. I've been in roles in New Zealand where I traveled to Sydney and kind of, I guess, felt the vibe, saw the business scene, and there was a role that was offered to me and would help relocate us to Sydney. Again, saying yes. And then LinkedIn came back on the horizon, and I remember vividly, our eldest daughter was a week old, and I was having a conversation with LinkedIn about a role at the time, aligned to what I'd done at Glassdoor. That role didn't work out, but that was a year before I joined. So again, saying yes, but also keeping myself on that same journey to say, "Look, I want to work at this business." This role didn't work out, but again, doing the right things, backing myself, and then a year later, got a role at LinkedIn.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dig into kind of where that takes us and kind of the insights we've got. You've worked across New Zealand, UK, Australia, you've been in Hong Kong. When we talk about talent and culture, and I hear a lot, especially being kind of based in APAC, about the differences. What differences have you noticed? And is it changed from what it was? There's a lot of shift going on at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge shift, but I think that there's differences, of course, and similarities. And I was lucky enough to spend a bit of time in Japan this year, and again, cultures there and business sort of etiquette. There's obviously differences, but I think what comes through in each of the environments and locations I've worked in is the human skills. Some people call them soft skills, but actually probably some of the harder skills to manage the communication piece. And I think we might go down this path in terms of touching on some of this, but that's where the similarities sort of ring true is, the transparency. People do business with people that they like and enjoy.
Yeah.
They back up what they say they're going to do. They follow through on things. They try not to overcomplicate it. And if they don't know something, they're not afraid to say, "Hey, can we just go back? I'd love to explore that a bit more. And I'm not quite sure what you mean and think." And what we're seeing come through now with the AI, which what are we? I don't know, 15, 20 minutes in, it's the first time it's popped up, is I don't think we want to lose sight of those human skills. And because that's the similarity I've seen. Hopefully helpful.
Yeah, again, everything I look at, we'll talk about tech, we'll talk about AI. We can't talk about we can't have any discussion without talking about all the kind of influence in the workplace that they've got going forward. But it's not failed to amaze me just over the last couple of years that we keep on coming back to the basics, coming back to kind of being human. I've been lucky enough to work, I think, in 8 countries across APAC now, just in the last kind of 2.5 years. And I was warned about cultural differences, and all I saw was similarities. I'll be really honest. I saw, in fact, I saw probably more risk taking, more daring, and more openness when I kind of went somewhere else. So completely get, and it's how do we leverage those? Because I'm looking at some of the stats from from your workplace learning reports and everything. Because one of the big things that's really attracted kind of and developed our conversation is just some of the research that LinkedIn does, just to kind of find out what's going on in the workplace, what can we predict. And you know, there's been so much. 49% of learning and development pros say that execs fear employees' lack of critical skills. In other words, the employees do not necessarily have the skills that are going to take the businesses forward. And when we see that, are we talking technical skills here? Are we talking soft skills here? Or are we talking what are we talking about when execs are saying there's this gap?
Yeah, again, I think it's a combination. If we look at those
Mm,
fastest growing skills that are coming up at the moment, the AI literacy one, the large language models, but then within those top five is also the communication, strategic thinking, and adaptability.
mm,
But it's, there's also a fine line, I think, a balance, and obviously LinkedIn provide learning resources to businesses, as do others. I know this is not just about LinkedIn, but I think, the worry for the execs is there, but equally on the flip is turning it around and saying to the execs and the C-suite, well, but what are you doing? What are you doing to close those gaps? Because
yeah,
what then happens with turnover, and albeit we're in a very tight market at the moment, and the businesses that I support are in that recruitment and talent
yeah,
sort of sector, is there is that worry, but then are they helping close the gap? Like, are they just waiting for people to leave and then realizing that there is a gap and they haven't done anything about it? Because the skills that are going out the door are probably the hardest to train. But what have they done whilst they've been there to help them in that regard? Because when they're losing them, they're also hard to replace. And so if
yeah,
people are joining, what and how are they being empowered to learn more? We can't. I'm a big one in we can't all be experts in everything and play to our
yeah,
strength. And I will probably bounce around with my thoughts a little bit during this discussion. But even on the home front and sharing personally, I've got two young children, one of which is at school. The other will start school next year. And we're seeing how they learn and what their
yeah,
skill sets are like. And I'm finding myself, almost having business conversations at home and saying, yeah, they might not be great in the maths arena, for example, but where they're good, let's lean into their strengths. And again, not to sound controversial, but there's some of the things I learned and did at school that I probably haven't done since, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, well, what do I need, and what do I need for my children, which is
Mm.
what drives me to be successful in the future.
I'm just going to pick up on that. I do want to come back to kind of the recruitment industry and kind of how they're facing on this and how what their role is and kind of helping companies through this. It's really interesting. We were looking at some statistics a couple of weeks ago. We did a webinar on Workplace 2030. It's a full theme that we're doing of like there's so many companies looking at that vision that in the next 5 years seems to be really, really key. And one of the things that we're noticing now is so many people are coming out with, and it's just going to increase, with degrees that are almost redundant, degrees that are almost no longer relevant.
Yeah,
And we can begin to list those out, but that's almost a bit of a scary thought. So when we talk about learning at a very young age, we're going to learn in different ways. That skill might not be used, or as you say, mathematics. Really, how many of us really will need to know that mathematics as we go forward? It's other things. Um, and I do think from what we're seeing, strategic thinking is misunderstood so much. We
yeah,
think the large language models kind of do the strategic thinking. They don't. They do the reasoning. There's a big difference. And that kind of that creative, innovative, the stuff where people thrive. That's where it's going to be wanted.
yeah. But also, like, just coming back quickly, the maths one, and I can't remember who told me this story, but it would have been when I was at school, and they're like, you can't use calculators in this exam. You're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket if you need to work something out. And then, look at all of us now with the, the smartphones and what we carry around and what's needed. But also on the skills piece, like, and AI is obviously the buzzword at the moment. And so, well, how are you using AI in your job? But I think it should be more, okay, well, what impact is it having? Because we could probably get lost and do different things. And I've certainly done things outside of work on the AI front that
Yeah.
is quite fun to lean into. But it's about nailing the AI tools that are going to help us succeed and do more and maybe free up time to have those, yeah, critical thinking skills, the strategic piece, the communication and working with humans. Now, granted, there are certain jobs that don't allow that, but the ones that do, I think we need to lean into it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to replace; it's going to hopefully help us do more.
We would never. I mean, I think it would be rare that we would think that we go into regular company, a regular job, and say you're not allowed to use the internet.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
would be it would be bizarre. I'm a very leading question, but kind of is the recruitment side of things? Let's just call it a couple of things. Recruitment doesn't always get the best reputation.
Yeah.
So for that industry, but I've seen it from another side. I've worked with so many companies that got some real depth to them. You can see the skill level, but secondly, the talent that's within there that can help businesses kind of develop their own teams and identify and keep that, either retain or identify other talent. Do you see it changing? Is the approach being different at the moment? What extra recruitment companies having to do?
Yeah, and I'll come back on what you said. Yeah, it doesn't always have the best reputation.
Hmm.
And I think that's up to those that support and work in the industry to
Yeah.
help improve that. I was a recruiter way back when, and again, studying and doing things. I didn't think I'd come out of university and then I'll be placing architects and building services engineers.
Okay.
But it taught me a lot. And I think, those that do it well, like I think the thing with recruitment, there's a low barrier to entry. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but, um, people, and you see new businesses popping up all the time in that space, but those that do it well and lean into it, do very well out of it. And I think the big thing, and this is where, it's that reliance on technology taking over from the human skills. And again, I've had this conversation at work, but also personally with people I know that work in the recruitment industry. The core skills are still the same, and that's not going to change. And I think the
Mhm.
recruitment industry is actually at the front of some of the changes we're seeing. If you think about a recruiter, depending on what industry they're in, the businesses that they speak to, they're probably hearing and seeing and learning more than that business itself. And so they're at the forefront really of what's happening, who's doing it well, who's leaning into it. And again, just putting that LinkedIn hat back on, some of the changes we're doing with our platform and the area of the business I work in, we're seeing efficiencies come from it. We're about to bring to market a new product in a few months' time, where we'll look at that and give recruiters more time back in their day. But it's not
Yeah.
taking away. It's taking over. It's actually giving them more. And I think those that do it well, and you can see the businesses that have been around for decades. Recruitment's not going anywhere. And I think, and I've had customers say to me as well, when LinkedIn launched, they thought we were going to sort of replace the recruitment industry. Or I believe, we're helping expand it.
Mhm.
We're allowing recruiters to do more and do what they do best. And myself and a colleague that work with our customers, every call we're on, pretty much we say, hey, we're not saying be in and on LinkedIn all day, every day, but use the tools that you have to work for you to have more conversations, to uncover new insights and data points and different things like that. But actually, you as the individual are the expert. And so I think, yeah, long odd answer there, Graham, but I'm getting to it, that the recruitment industry is actually at the forefront, because of the amount of businesses they're exposed to.
Again, James, you just kind of popped something up into my head. We're talking about a recruitment industry where people have personal relationships, they're tight. And it's interesting because we've seen a couple of the recruitment platforms have big shifts in their workforce. just in the last kind of, I know there was one in particular last year. I had a big shift, and they've just done it again. So they've lost about 6 or 7% of their employees because they've moved to tech on it. And it's interesting you're saying the more that they get data points, the more they can have those conversations and always be a kind of trusted advisor or something. I know it's an old cliche, but be somebody who's of a real resource. And then you're seeing the tech platforms moving maybe even potentially further away from that. Be interested to see how that works out. We're coming back to what you said at the beginning. Human skills is what people want.
Yeah, and also like understanding what the jobs of the future are. Sorry, just to add on to that. So
Mm.
I think the core will remain, but it's, even if we look at some of the new jobs that are coming through, or the skills that were needed, and the top jobs that are needed right now weren't probably jobs even in place 10, 15 years ago. And so it's, I think everyone's got a part to play. But skills, roles, job titles, and things like that will change. But I think there's still enough work out there. And it's just, again, I think that's leaning into those strengths that people have, and understanding where you fit.
Yeah, we need to find out what are the new jobs that are coming out. What ones are you seeing? I don't think being a web developer was one of the options when I was at school. So
No.
yeah, so what are the new jobs now? What ones are you seeing beginning to move?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the AI
Hmm.
job titles are the big ones that they're coming through. Again, if we look at some of the sort of most in demand, like sales is still very much up there, because yeah, we build these products and we roll them out, but okay, well, how do we then get them in front of our customers or our ideal customer base? Um,
Hmm.
so they're big ones. And then, but again, even the key roles that don't change in the healthcare space, and then healthcare and tech, um, going hand in hand. What do they need? The developers as well of these new technologies that are coming up. Again, if we think about, yeah, when I was at school and university, these weren't titles, and again, I make that personal connection. Like, my eldest has just turned 7. When she enters the workforce, whatever age that is, depending on what educational sort of pathway she wants to go down, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking, okay, what do I tell her to really double down on in school? And sorry, like, just quick one, like, obviously school holidays is a big one in our
Yep.
household. How do we fill those school holidays? She did a coding camp when she was 5. So my wife was in Melbourne. We had to find something that, versus just sitting in front of a screen, and me working away. And she went to a coding camp and came back after 3 days, and she built her own, basically Play-Doh, or I'm trying to think of the right word here, but a cartoon where she'd built the model, and then she'd filmed it, and then she'd put it all together, and coded it, and came out with it was a 30-second cartoon, basically.
Yeah, yeah, I do that in my spare time, obviously.
Exactly.
At what age?
She was 5. Yeah. So.
I'm feeling even more like a thank you. You're supposed
Yeah.
to make me feel good on a Friday. Uh, I'm feeling even more like a relic now. This is okay. So taking on that, for people like me, and when we kind of think about leadership development, we think about recruitment. Um, how do we stop being spectators on this? How do companies? What I do see the danger. What I do see a danger here is people waiting to see what's going to happen. We've gone through this before when big kind of huge changes have happened. So, well, what might be different next month or something might change. We actually started off saying we could have had this. It feels like the perfect time, but the perfect time will also be in 2 months' time to have this conversation because there'll be something else about. So I'm curious, what's your thought? How do we stop being spectators? How did they grab this? How did they kind of take the information that you guys are putting out there, we're talking about on a daily basis, and say, right, this is the path we need to go down. It might not be right, but it's the start.
Yeah, and I think it's, rather than just reading, it's probably doing. And organizations, and that I've partnered with or spoken to or have heard from, they've created these safe spaces internally, to rather than like a mass rollout. Like there's so many new tech and AI platforms and different things coming out that it's almost like bewildering, or okay, where do we start? But those that create like a safe space internally, again, you've got your commercials on one side and any the basics, and I've heard of a story where people were putting in their customer base to chat GPT, not realizing it was open source, and then people were then basically creating an agent to pull down, okay, my competitors are X, Y, and Z. How should I sell against them? And the reason they were able to build that was they put this information on open source. So where I'm going with this is create environments where it's safe for people to lean into it. Because I think, and there's also a generational conversation taking place at the moment as well. And I don't know if time will allow, but we can touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much goodness at every level. We've got to ensure people are doing things versus just reading and worrying about the changes that are coming up and the part that they can play. And I think that, comes back to, and again, a personal piece. My dad retired at the start of COVID, probably the worst time ever because they planned all these trips. But what he was then able to do was dive back in and work virtually and remotely and contract back to businesses he worked at because he had a different, and that's a personal one. I'm sure we've all got stories like that. There's still a skill set that can be learned from. And I think businesses, and this is business leaders, owners, whatever it may be, shareholders have got to allow the space and, free up funds, budgets, whatever it may be, to play and explore and lean into the tools that are coming out and thinking about, okay, what does that future be? What will that future state look like? And do we have the right people on the team, or do we need to build a bench? And again, that could be a conversation around, okay, well, what do workforces look like later? And the gig economy hasn't been spoken about for a while, I don't think, but I think
That's true. No, very true. Yeah.
Where, okay, cool, well, let's build this bench of talent and let's, tap into it. And they work on one role here and then they contract out, which I think, again, any listeners in my customer base, it probably speaks to them strongly on that contractor piece is like, okay, well, can they work a half day somewhere and then they work a half day somewhere else because they're not share anything, but the skills they're bringing in will keep the business moving forward.
That's an interesting concept, because being able to see, having somebody who works half a day elsewhere and half a day with you, it fulfills one, a need that you've got, but they're also bringing in ideas and thoughts and everything from external. So that would be, that's interesting. I just had a quick look. I've got so many kind of notes everywhere here, and it's the theme that I'm seeing on the quotes from a number of people that you guys have interviewed. Amber Gruel from Boston Consulting Group, start before you're ready. Eric Dozier from Eli Lilly, risk is the new safety. The biggest risk is playing it safe and doing nothing.
Yeah.
So AI is not a technology project, it's a leadership mindset shift. So the common theme through a lot of these quotes, not a big one in quotes, but these are really in context, is you got to go now. This is, this isn't you, this is now embedded. If you're not doing something about it. So that's where we kind of make sure that we're not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. Have you seen any great examples of people kind of embracing a shift? It might not be complete, but actually kind of pulling it in and saying, okay, this is the road we're going to go down. And let's see what's happened. So have you come across any companies that have done that well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, and I won't name names if that's all right. But
yeah, of course.
It goes back to those that are willing to try new things, and there's a couple that I know of locally, and then some globals where they've created groups and said, okay, listen, we do need to do something here. We need to change, and they've empowered people to go off and find new tools, play with them, share back how it will benefit the business. And it's almost like mini case studies, like safe case studies. And having, the other big thing is having the right people in those groups. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you ask and you get the people that always say yes. You get maybe some that are on the fence, and it's bringing in a cohort of learners, internal learners across every, I guess, employee type, if we can, brand them up that way, but also generation, and saying, okay, well, how would this, benefit, and what are the learnings? And so those that are doing well, um, are those that have done something about it rather than waiting and seeing. But then tied it back, and it comes back to, okay, well, how is AI might change my job, but I'm not going to let it define me, and I'm going to use AI to help me, and develop myself. That's an AI specific one. But
Mm.
yeah, to your question, it's those that have tried something new and realized we can't just do the same thing and expect different results. Yeah.
Um, I'd use up here. It was a Jack Welch quote. We've got a kind of an animation that we use regularly. It was two wheel. This is going to be terrible me trying to describe it, but let me do it. Two wheels, one inside another one. The external wheel's going at a faster speed than the internal, and basically saying if the external environment's going quicker than we are, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
We've got an issue.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't remember it either, and this is going to be terribly described, but it's basically, all the technological changes we've seen over our lifetime, and how quickly it's got to, I think it was like, I want to say 10 million users or something like that. And it's just obviously so much quicker. Um, and the other changes happened, and we're still all here, and we're still doing jobs, and we're finding out what drives our passion and things like that. We've just got to move quicker.
Yeah. Which I kind of think is an exciting. I genuinely think is an exciting part. Just a couple of kind of final questions. What, in your opinion, what would help us move quicker? What have you seen that helps maybe individuals to kind of overcome that? There's going to be a natural fear. There's a fear of uncertainty. We've got that. That's allowed. We're
Yeah.
okay with that. There's not that. Is there anything that you've seen that the recruiters are telling you, or you're kind of seeing within the platform that people are doing that's like just helping them maybe take that shift and become, God, we're going right in a circle today, coming back to kind of having that yes attitude?
Yeah, and as cliche as it sounds, Graham, it's just doing it. And so the example I'll give is, people are resistant to change, and how people operate day to day. And again, it was tongue in cheek, to you earlier when we were preparing for this, and you got your paper-based notes.
Not supposed
And
to tell people that.
yeah,
Shh.
yeah, yeah. But I was the same, and I think I've got 18 moleskin, and for some reason I'm left-handed. I can, only use certain pens, otherwise I smudge it and blah blah blah. Moleskins were my thing, and so I was making all these notes because I'm a bit of a note taker, and sometimes I'd reference back, but I know I'd always have them and where they were and their date and, time aligned. But I realized actually and then the price was going up, as we all know, cost of living and blah blah blah. Anyway, I was spending a lot on moleskins, and my wife was like, "What are you doing? Like, you don't even look at some of these." I'm like, "Yeah, but I know that they're there.
But they're there. They're there.
I need to
They're
reference."
there, just in case.
So anyway, I was like, no, I need to change. So I've gone to the Remarkable. And again, it's probably not filed the way certain people file it, but that's my way of doing it. And I was like, I just had to make that step and do it. And where I'm going with this is, we have brought out AI enhancements in the tools and products that I sell. Um, they don't work at the first instance, or they don't work well necessarily, or people are afraid of them. And so we ran a session with one of my customers, and they're like, "Yep, we're not using the AI assisted emails, is what they are. They don't really work for us. They don't have the right tonality and different things." And so I said, "Okay, that's fair. Listen, we need this feedback, to help us develop it. But let's run through this in real time." So we got it up on a big screen, and we shared it and said, "Okay, well, let's run the first draft of the AI email." And that they didn't like that. And I read it and I was like, yeah, probably wouldn't get the response. I said, well, let's just tweak it. Let's just spend 30 seconds working on it and tweak it. And let's get the second draft before we press send. The second draft is something that they would have sent. Yeah. And so it was like that initial resistance. No, it doesn't work. But then we work it through. And I think, yeah, that's that. Just do it, lean into it. Um, and see what happens. Like you're not going to break it in terms of LinkedIn or whatever you're working in, but not being afraid to try new things. You might get a different result or a quicker result or a better result.
Just something really disastrous for it to have a terrible result. I again, I don't think this is unusual to now. I think there's confirmation bias everywhere. I don't think this will work. Oh, I was right. It doesn't work. So we
Yeah.
look for it. We look for the right answer right away. And we maybe got lazy on that because how we've searched for answers in the last little while, we just kind of take what's at the top of Google. When was the last time somebody went onto page 2? In all
Yeah.
honesty. And so we just look for, okay, that must be right, even though it's maybe not the best. Let's wrap up with a couple of a couple of questions. So we've talked a lot about traits. I'm gonna kind of pull one out there. One of the traits that's going to be really important over the next kind of 5 or 6 years is probably curiosity. People tend to kind of being really kind of curious of what's going on around us. Let's try this. What other traits do you think are absolutely key for people entering into the workplace or dealing with change?
Yeah, and I mean maybe it's come through when people are listening to this. I don't think I've mentioned it, but it's a big one for us at LinkedIn. But even before I joined, like something I believed in is that growth mindset approach. Um, that continuous learning. Like no one's perfect, nor do I hope people profess to be. But I
No.
think let's continually learn and lean into things. Say yes, figure it out as you go. Like one of the things we say sometimes is let's fly the plane, but we'll build it as we're flying it. And it's that kind of and I've been on my own sort of personal coaching journey, if you like, over the last sort of 4 or 5 months. And one of the big things that's come out of that, and that I think it is part of the answer here, is that self-trust. Believe in yourself. And again, that failure it's not a bad thing to fail. Like we learn from that. And sometimes we're all looking for answers and we're kind of having conversations in our own head, but the clarity comes from taking action, and doing things and leaning into it. Um, but the other one as well, in terms of traits, and it comes back to some of the stuff we've talked at the start, the soft skills and human skills. It's just being a good human, you know, and do what you say you're going to do, follow it up, all the stuff that again, learning all the time. But as a father, the kids are obviously getting older. Like how do I want them to see me, but also how do I want them to be as people? And I think that good
Yeah.
humor is inside and outside of work.
Um, and I'm going to go right back to, the organizer with Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie actually has consistently said, in the books and all his kind of writings, be a good person who is skilled at. So be a good person who's skilled at leadership. Be a good person who's skilled at presenting. Not be a great presenter. Just be a
Yeah.
good person who is skilled at doing this. And it's a huge shift in mindset. I think that's missed a lot. So it sounds like you've kind of been challenging yourself. You've been doing a few things differently over the last few things. The final question we always ask our guests. We're going to kind of collate all these. What's a challenge that we would maybe set down to any listeners? Something that we would ask them to look, try this, see how it goes. Just something that's a little bit unusual and something we would maybe not do normally to just see that different result we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, we keep saying the same thing, but it's about saying yes to things. And I think, to that question, like there's a bit of a self journey I've been on. Um, I had a milestone birthday a couple of years ago. Again, you can probably guess, but that as part of that, it's like, okay, well, yeah, where do I want to be in 10 years' time? Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And again, it's saying yes to things. And I think and I'm going to lean on something that we were lucky enough to have a keynote speaker come in a few weeks ago at LinkedIn, and again, it could just be well timed with running this session. But a guy, and I don't mind mentioning his name, I'm sure he won't mind,
Mm.
when you could, even maybe look into,
Yep.
is Mark Matthews. He's an ex-professional surfer, and his big thing was about facing your fears and lean into them. What scares you might be actually what gets you further ahead. So,
Yeah.
facing those challenges, doing, public speaking is his big fear, but now that's his job,
Mm.
right? He's going around and doing keynotes and presentations, and there probably wasn't many dry eyes in the room when he presented, and that link back to business, and I think the other thing is understanding what your passions are and ensuring we're doing something about them. Again, most of us, I'm sure, enjoy our work. Some of us are lucky enough to love it. Most of us will probably have to work for an extended period of time in our life. So let's enjoy it. But at the same time, let's learn about ourselves. Let's keep leaning into that. Set ourselves challenges, either inside or outside of work. And certainly where I've got the most out of my working life, my profession and career, is when I've also been doing something outside of work that's challenging me. Yeah.
It's I can't remember who told me to get, but kind of saying that, yes, leading into the fear. One of the ways to maybe overcome that, maybe this will be helpful for some people, is ask the question, what's the damage that would be done if I don't do it?
Yeah.
So, they talk about psychology, but towards and away from motivation and everything. But yeah, okay, say yes to it. But if you don't say yes, what's the damage that's going to come back?
Yeah. And I always use, just on that, like, in 5 years' time, how big will this decision mean or matter to you?
Yeah.
Let's not overthink things too much. And again, I think that can be work and life.
James, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been too long. I have got not much. I've not got much more paper, but I've got certainly lots more in my head that I'd love to talk to you about. So maybe we can do that again. Kind of get maybe really deep dive in some certain topics that we see that are going out. But it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you for coming on early on a Friday morning.
Yeah.
And look forward to catching up with you again.
Yeah. More coffees.
Take care.
Yeah.